Cynthia Sue Larson, welcome to Quantum Messages. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Ani. I love talking about this topic, so I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Thanks. So I've seen you on multiple podcasts before, and I'm very attracted to your message and your experiences. Being an experiencer, I'm an experiencer myself, and I just really connected with your story and all of the research that you've done. And the research that I'm doing right now is really trying to dig deep into merging metaphysics and quantum physics so that we can understand our multidimensional reality. And so I'm using the term quantum messages because I believe that when we get certain deep messages, it's actually from the quantum realm. It's quantum messages. So we're tapping into this deeper reality. And I just really appreciate all of the work you've done and your book that you've written, all the podcasts and all the messages that you're trying to share with the population. And I wanted to ask you, I have a feeling a lot of the people that will be watching this already know who you are and know your story, but I just would like you to give us a brief background on your experiences being an experiencer, and what was like the one experience that you had that really shifted your mind state in realizing that we are actually living in a multi-dimensional reality.
Yeah, well, to be honest, in early childhood, I was noticing some really strange stuff. Like I could think stop rain, and I would actually see it stop raining, and then I was doing that consistently, start, stop. I was having fun with it, like flipping a light switch on and off. Then I ran to tell my mom, and it didn't work because she's like crossing her arms, like, now what? From this little kid, with kids, it can be pretty annoying. Like, now what? And it didn't work. But anyway, so if I'm honest about it, I've been noticing anomalous mind matter interaction all my life. And part of that probably is related to the fact that I'm what's called born aware. It's related to the near death experience, but a little bit different. Diane Brandon wrote a book about it. So I want to just lay that out there. And then I've had a series of other anomalous activation events, such as a Kundalini awakening. I've just had a bunch of things. I think, long story short, if you believe in a high self or a higher level of consciousness, I think that part of me wants to keep me on track in this lifetime and doesn't want me falling off course. So I see evidence of that. But to say, what are these big reality shifts, Mandela effects that I've witnessed collectively with other people? I think one of the big ones was the sundial sculpture at the Berkeley Marina that I witnessed appear out of nowhere. I'd sort of seen it coming and going, but I know that sounds weird because it's like a very large concrete sundial sculpture. It's something like 20 feet tall. It's got a base that's about 15, 20 feet across in diameter. And I would go to have lunch with a couple of friends, Jan and Cliff, that I used to work at Citibank with. I was a project manager. I do have a degree in physics from UC Berkeley. So I want to tell you that I've cleared a bunch of academic and social and corporate hurdles. And I was on the fast track for high-level management at Citibank. So anyway, people didn't see me as crazy. I want to put that there. And I don't do drugs. Okay. Having said all that, boy, have I seen some weird stuff. And this, I think the sundial sculpture, for me, it had been sort of occasionally showing up and then not showing up. But this was the first time, as I was asking my friends Cliff and Jan and talking to them about the topic of what I was calling reality shifts, for want of a better word or phrase. And they were just listening to me. And that's when they just sort of stopped in their tracks, pointed straight ahead at the sundial sculpture that had a little plaque stating it had been a gift from a sister city in Japan from the 1970s. And here it is in the 1990s at that point. It had been there for over 20 years, but we'd never seen it be there before when we were all three of us together. And this is a path we would frequently walk. So that was huge. That was my aha moment that I'm not just alone in perhaps some very strange psychosis or something. Like I'm just occasionally witnessing strange aberrations. No, Cliff and Jan agreed. And Jan was then continuing the conversation, letting me know that the main thing she noticed is when she'd go on one of her business trips and come back to the United States, people would be very different. She was noticing people changing. And I thought that was interesting. She is a people person. So I think that's where she would notice it. But it just felt like, okay, this is real. And that's the moment I knew I need to create a website about it, which I've done, Reality Shifters, collect firsthand reports and talk to the people so I can find out what they're thinking and what they were feeling when they witnessed these things. And then down the road, this whole Mandela Effect terminology came up, where people are collectively remembering alternate memories.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And you've written extensively on the Mandela Effect. And based upon your most recent book, The Mandela Effect and Its Society, Awakening from Me to We, which is, I really love that part. Really like experiencing and looking outwards instead of, we're together instead of separate. And more people, like not just one person is experiencing it as well.
Yes.
And, you've listed Berenstein. This is weird to me because the Berenstein Bears, the Lion and the Lamb,
Yeah.
these are like memories that I have. Stouffer's stovetop stuffing, which I remember as a kid because I was born in the 80s. Kit Kat, Mirror Mirror on the Wall, Curious George. Do you feel like he had a tail or no tail? I'm just curious.
I remember a tail, so
Mhm.
it just seems weird with no tail. Like that would have always been a strange thing. Like, how do we know he's a monkey? What
Yeah.
is this?
Yeah. And you know what's funny? I asked my son, he's 18, and he remembers the no tail. And he was born in
Oh,
2007. So I feel like that's interesting.
wouldn't you think that I would, if I was a child and I saw that, I'd be questioning, like, is that a bear? How do we know it's a monkey? I'd really want to know.
Yeah.
Like, it looks
It's
like a
interesting.
bear. How can we tell? Is it just the length of the arms and legs? It's like
Yeah.
Berenstain. When people remember that for sure it was Berenstein or Stein because there was
Yeah.
that whole conversation, Steen or Stein. You wouldn't say it if it was Stein. There would have been no conversation.
Yeah, and so, I mean, it seems like the list goes on and on and on with so many, like a variety of different experiences, like time jumping, people and animals coming back from the dead, all kinds of strange things happening. And in your book, you've listed several things that the potential possibilities of what these might be, the Mandela effect.
Right.
So, out of these lists, I'm just going to read them, and then can you maybe choose a few that you feel that you really connect to, and as you've done more research that you feel might be actually able to describe what's happening. So you said false memories and confabulation, simulation theory, scientists at CERN, which I thought was interesting, quantum phenomena, quantum immortality, time traveling, converging timelines, or reality bubbles, nonlinear orthogonal time shifts, which I feel like I connect to, spiritual apocalypse, human resonance, and evolution of consciousness. And I'm sure there's more than that, quantum effects, etc. What do you feel now? Which one do you feel really kind of describes what's happening with the Mandela effect?
Well, more than any particular reason, this may sound strange, but I think the whole point is to get us out of one kind of a paradigm of thinking and into the next paradigm. So there's a word called ontology in science, and it has to do with how we assume reality itself is constructed. And so an ontological model is our idea of how everything works. And so all of these different theories as to what's going on with the Mandela effect are great, but fundamentally, it's time. I think that this phenomenon, as well as other interesting metaphysical phenomenon, is inviting humanity at this juncture to really address our concepts of space time. We're sort of locked into this view that only matter matters. That's an assumption that we've founded some of Western science on, and that we can measure things and only the measurables really matter. And then we're looking at things like 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time, even though our physicists who are doing theoretical physics to unite the teeny tiny world of fundamental quantum building blocks with a huge cosmological scale of relativistic physics. When you bring that together, some of the string theorists, for example, instantly notice we need 11 dimensions. And also over in Switzerland, they're noticing our brains operate routinely in 7, 8, 9, 10, and up to 11 dimensions. That's been proven in mathematical models recently. So based on all that, I think the theories are great, but they're just an invitation to open our minds and blow up this old ontological model of we're locked in space-time. Obviously, it's something bigger than that. And so you and I were just talking a little bit before we got started, and and you mentioned that just now also you mentioned that you have an attraction to this idea of the nonlinear orthogonal state, and that goes right into the heart of what I'm talking about, where the viewpoint of what is reality needs to completely be transformed. So I love that one.
Mm-hmm.
I also love the evolution of human consciousness for obvious reasons. I think those two kind of go together. So I'm a big fan of both of those. I can see the simulation theory as well, that and that has roots in fact and logic as well. Because if you look at the work of Dennis, the scientist Hoffman, who talks about how visual acuity and everything we think we see is not really what we're seeing. We're translating the real reality into something that we can process. So it's very much like the desktop on your computer screen has a little trash icon, and you put a file into the trash. That's not what the computer is actually doing, but it's the way that we can sort of visualize what's happening, and that's how we operate with the computer. Just similarly, all of our senses are translators, because we're locked into a very tiny little smidgen of the visible spectrum, the auditory spectrum, just and you name any of our senses, and we're just in a teeny tiny little smidgen of it, not really sensing the whole reality. So these are some of my favorites, would be those, but I like a lot of them. The simulation, to me, has a long track record, because obviously if you recognize that things are not what they seem, and that we're processing all of it, then clearly we are, like we were saying earlier, we're capable of interacting with reality, with that ontological reality, in a far greater fashion than we ever have before. I prefer the word dream to simulation, but that's just a personal preference. It's pretty much the same exact idea. And if you take it that way, then the simulation or dream theory goes back thousands of years to some of the early philosophers and spiritual visionaries.
Yeah, simulation for me as well. Using that word, I try and stay away from it, because it's like really kind of going down the path of, transhumanism for me. And just like it's shifting our mind state to believe that, this was pre-programmed ahead of time, and maybe it could have been. However, I still feel, based upon my own experience, it's actually a living reality, and that the quantum particles are living conscious things. And it really ties into the Hopi prophecy as well, which you've talked about extensively, and I actually researched extensively as well. That we're shifting into the fifth world. We're ending the fourth world, we will be shifting into the fifth world. Do you feel that, because we, based upon their prophecy, that because we are going through this shift right now, reality is shifting as well, and so we're kind of bleeding into the multidimensional aspects of what is actually really happening, and so we're able to see it at this time because we are shifting into the fifth world?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a long fascination in this topic. I published a paper in Parabola magazine 25 years ago for the threshold issue. The article was called "Comes True, Being Hoped For," and it's about Tunatya or Tunatiava, which is the Hopi word for "comes true, being hoped for." And they definitely do have an oral history, and also a written form of it in the Hopi Prophecy rock. They've got a very ancient sacred stone that is carved to indicate this is what it looks like when the world splits and the beginning of the next world starts. And they were looking ahead toward the time that we're in right now. On the Hopi Prophecy rock, which I did not write about in my paper in the article, but it shows the two great shakings of gourds dropping ashes, which many people interpret to be World War I, World War II. And then you can see on that timeline, like, oh my goodness, we're right at the point where there's just one last chance to change the line you're on. And then if you choose the transhuman materialistic path, that's the path which looks good at first. I mean, it looks like everything's moving along nicely, but the little beings on that path, they start, their little square heads start coming off their necks, coming off their bodies. Whereas the lower line, where people stay in relationship to the earth, the creator, each other, the plants and animals, even if they're elderly and walking with a cane, they make it just fine. And they go around the corner of the boulder that this is carved on. Whereas the path that looks like it's getting off to a okay start, it just fizzles into nothingness. It actually looks like it vanishes into the cloud, like poof, and then they're gone. To me, that's not a good sign. So I think that's a warning to transhumanism, actually. That's how I take it. And then when I wrote the article about Comes True, Being Hoped For, I talked about the physics and the ancient stories that were in the fourth world. The Hopi had foreseen there would be 7 worlds, that were in the fourth one. that we'll know when we're moving into the fifth because we'll see the signs of extinct plants and animals coming back. Well, guess what? We are. That's in the Mandela Effect. I dedicate a section of my book to show the coelacanths, which are these huge fish, giant ocean-going animals that they had been extinct for a long time. Now they're back. The same thing with a huge, giant Galapagos tortoise and a whole bunch of other plants and animals that there's so many of them that scientists have had to come up with a term for it, the Lazarus species. This wasn't a thing before, but to me it makes sense. Like with the Hopi understanding, the remote viewing, if you will, of our human future history, we're going to come to a point where we will be tempted to kind of go in this, lose our heads, go into the cloud. I mean, how literal can you be? Versus stay in relationship with each other. And we don't need to be Luddites, but it helps to stay in connection and genuinely care about plants and animals and the earth and our own relationships. So I think it's a huge, huge thing. And then the Hopi understand this idea of comes true being hoped for, that when you really need something and you love it with the fullness of your caring heart, then that will be something that's connected for you. So we do have free will. So we're not being just shuttled through life like little robotic beings. And our true sovereignty, our true caring ability matters. And that's the advice that the Hopi present that I share in that article, that we keep the Kopavi, that's the crown chakra, open to receive guidance. So at the time of the ending of the world, you'll be guided, that they were guided in the last time the world ended by flood. Then when they came into the fourth world from the third, they were guided by the ant people, and they received guidance by day by following a cloud, and by night by following a light that moved. And so they were taken in rafts. They called it rafts. We might call it ships. So it's very interesting. I think the whole topic is interesting because it presents a whole bunch of things, a lot of rabbit holes you can start going down.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Right when you were talking, I was like, oh, I'm gonna ask her this and this and this. I feel right now at this moment in time, we are on the precipice. It's the two roads are splitting. And part of humanity, from what my observations being a teacher, working with a lot of children and students, and also a public speaker as well, is that some of us will be going down the transhumanism path, and some of us will be going back to the earth and being in reciprocity with her and all of the beings on earth. And it's, there's been a lot of talk in the spiritual community for, years, and I'm sure you've heard this for over 45 years. I don't even know how long, about, the splitting of the new earth prophecy, basically, and how, we're going to be moving into this new earth. And lately I've been really contemplating, I've been having a hard time understanding it on a deeper level, probably because I need to just feel and experience it. I'm a feeler, intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, how is it that we can just shift into this new earth? How can some people go onto this new earth and then some people be on this other transhumanism earth at the same time?
Yeah, this well, and I dive into this in my book because I get into the quantum physics, but I try to do my best to keep it accessible so everybody can come along with me. Starting with, just the language of what happens when you notice these Mandela effects. I'm going to start there. One thing that happens when we notice Mandela effects is we might notice there's something called a flip flop. So Chick-fil-A, it's a business that has it's like a fast food restaurant. The spelling of that name, Chick-fil-A, has been, I think it's gone through at least 3 iterations that people have seen. Everything from CHIC, like Chick-fil-A, to Chick with a CK, and then just with a K. Anyway, it's been kind of hard to keep up with that. Personally, I've seen Costco, the business, drop the T and go to Costco. And I was so busy with other things, I didn't have time to document it. And people ask, well, why don't you take a picture of it? Even if I did, what I've noticed when I do take pictures of things, that evidence usually vanishes. So for me, the flip-flop, I'll get to where I'm going with this in just a minute, but it's showing that I'm actually essentially moving into these different realities. Another example, 2 more quick examples. Looking out the window in my dining room to the house next door, I could see on occasion a while back that they had gutter guards installed to keep leaves from getting caught in the rooftop gutters. And then maybe a day or so later, there's no gutter guard at all. And then it would be back to the gutter guards and then no gutter guard at all. And I brought that up to my husband, like, wait a minute, what's going on over here? When did they do this? And then it became kind of funny, like, okay, now I guess they're gone. So we saw it show up and vanish. And then our family dog, we don't have him now, but back when he was alive, he had cataracts, or it looked like to me, like, oh my gosh, his eyes are getting cloudy. But I know that with enough love, just going to a vibratory frequency of just so much love, you can. I've written about this in my book, Reality Shifts. You can actually experience healing for things and animals and plants and everything. And so I just felt so much love, like we need his eyes to be functioning. And then his eyes looked clear, and they stayed that way until one day my daughter came to me and said, Mom, something about the dog. And I said, is it his eyes? She said, yes. And then I told her, okay, sometimes it looks that way, but there's another reality where his eyes are just fine, and just feel all the love for him. Know that we need him to have good vision. He'll be fine. And then my husband came to me with the same thing. But once we were all on board with that, the dog never had cataracts again. So, okay, where am I going with this? I'm going to a topic in physics, which a lot of physicists might not want to bring up directly, but it's superposition of states. Mm-hmm. And what's happening is we've now got a majority of physicists in the world that agree that it's not just something that happens on the so-called quantum scale. They're going to actually agree, at least privately. And if you give them a survey and they don't put their name on it, you can take a survey of a group of 100 scientists and physicists, and they'll probably, the majority now is going to agree, yeah, you and I and everyone and everything actually does exist in a superposition of states. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? It means all those things I just described can be experienced by us, and we can make advantage of it and take advantage of it. So if you wake up feeling tired, you can tell yourself, yeah, I felt that way, but I'm going to recognize there's a superposition of states, and I'm going to ask how good can it get, and realize I feel great. Never mind that it felt a bit weird for a minute there. And you can do that all the time. And I think that's the greatest invitation of this entire topic for us, is to be an active observer, which means observe that there could be, observe something kind of not so good, then acknowledge there could be a superposition of states, mm-hmm. and then choose the one that's how good can it get. And a lot of people don't realize they can do that. So I think this Mandela effect is brilliant because it's giving us an opportunity to play with it, very much like children play in a sandbox with toys and build castles.
Right. You're playing with a multidimensional reality, and I find that really interesting. So my question is we are in a third dimensional reality, and there is a collective field that we are all experiencing. So there is some form of structure to this reality, even though like there's 8 billion people on this planet, and my perception of reality and your perception of reality is slightly different. And because it's slightly different, then are we on slightly different Earths? But then my other question is that when there's a massive event that happens, like let's say, a comet comes, or a meteorite hits the planet, or there is a pandemic, or there's a massive, volcano that goes off, like a caldera. We are all as a collective, we're all experiencing this. And that is on our own little, like, separate perceptual Earths, which is strange to me. But then there's that collective field that we all agree upon. Can you? Right?
Actually, that may not be true. It may not be as true as we tend to assume. And so the physicist I'm following currently, and he and his team received a prestigious award, which I didn't mention in my book because it hadn't happened yet. But his idea is on the cover of my book. These are Wigner bubbles. And so I'm just showing it. It's in the palm of my hand, holding 2 crystal balls. They represent reality. You could say they're collective realities. So remember, I'm defining a Mandela effect as a collective alternate memory. And if you've got 2 different possibilities, you've got one collective who's here and you've got another collective here. So basically, there may be no such thing as so-called objective reality, because that's another huge assumption of our paradigm. This whole ontological truth that we started out talking about today, Ani, is, the ontology. If we're presuming that there is this one collective truth, and now what I'm saying is, what if there isn't? And I did write a paper about that with George Weissman, one of the hippies who saved physics. There's a book by Kaiser about that, by that title. And so some of those guys are my friends, like Fred Allen Wolf, and they're great. They wanted to not just shut up and calculate, they wanted to get to the heart of what is quantum physics.
Mm-hmm.
So George Weissman and I wrote a paper about the fact that this is an assumption, the objectivity assumption. And it looks to me and to him and to a whole lot of forward-thinking physicists right now that it's not one truth. There actually could be actually an infinite number of truths. And I think this is the graduation point for a lot of humanity. And so those of us who are able to say, okay, I see something, just a terrible event just occurred. I recognize there can be two possibilities here, and I'm going to choose the how good can it get one. And I know that's what we need, and that's what I'm experiencing. Those of us who are doing that and capable of doing that are going to be experiencing a completely different reality than those who are stuck or feel stuck. I should say it that way. They're not really stuck, but they might still feel like they're stuck with that materialistic, that so-called presumption of objectivity, like there's only one reality, we're trapped, there's no way out. I know that's not true based on what I've seen and what I write about. And I think that's what drives me. If you wonder what's my passion to get this information out, that's what it is. I want people to know we can be active observers. The questions you ask nature is answering. Even if you don't get it in words, you're going to get it in what you live. And so when you crave and ache and long to know how good can it get for myself and all concerned, you're automatically going to be on that better pathway. So if people are listening and they're getting panicky about now, like, I don't want to be on the wrong path, you're not going to be. All you have to do is just ask, how good can it get for myself and all concerned? Mm-hmm. And instantly you're going to get uplifted.
Yeah, it's fascinating because when I step away from, going online or looking at X or seeing what's going on in the world, and you just focus on the present moment and focus on what's going on around you, in my reality, it doesn't even seem real to me.
I know.
And it doesn't seem real at all. It seems like it's, and I feel that it's not part of my reality. I feel like when I don't pay attention to it, it's like you said, it's literally in somebody else's reality. And so it's really interesting how with technology now, there's this kind of bleed through effect. And because we have the ability to be able to see supposedly what's going on in the rest of the world, we think that that's actually happening. And do you feel that because we have this access that it's shifting people's perceptions and it's manipulating the way that they see the world? Or do you feel like it's a gift for humanity?
Which part is the gift?
The technology itself, like being able to see what's happening in other parts of the world based upon our access to, online, basically.
Technology itself is neutral. I have some strong feelings about some types of technology, but that's only personal experiences. So I feel pretty burned out on certain types of artificial superintelligence. Keenly, overly, to some people's taste, concerned about some of the downside, but I don't think it's too much of a concern. So AI in particular is rather different than the internet so far. So we're about to go through an exponential increase in what the technology is capable of doing. And so it's going to put us in the thick of all of humanity's best and worst abilities. And so to the degree that we can fine tune who we are on the inside, which sounds like a very spiritual practice, and it is, to recognize that the main thing is to maintain your own equanimity, to maintain your own groundedness, your own sense of inner peace and calm. So this is a time, I'm going to sound like I'm talking like a spiritual person, because I am. And I think it's very important when you're faced with technology that's about to hit an exponential level and just go crazy smart, that it's more important than ever that we need to embody and be the principles and ethics that we most care about, such as honesty, integrity, love. And obviously an AI can't embody love the way a human can, but we can at least model this is the correct way to treat others. And you may wonder, why does that matter so much? Again, the technology is about to go exponential. So we're going from a place where news was being reported, we could sort of ask questions, get answers, Now, and through all of that, there was always so-called yellow journalism with some people that owned publishing companies taking advantage of that and just publishing what they wanted to steer the public with. That was true of television. We've seen it with social media, where I think this easy way to summarize that is I saw it with television 25 years ago. I did an interview, and then off the record, off the camera, the producer said, "I don't think we'll air that segment." I said, "Why not?" And it turned out that the public is not the people that watch the TV show or partake of any of the social media or news outlets. It's not, it's their advertisers. So that meant that only the advertisers would be sort of courted. And this makes a huge difference in your question. You might think, how does this all come in? It's so important because the technology does not exist in a vacuum. It's either paid for by some corporate interest hoping to make money down the end run. And if they're employing AI, and more of them are, with the large language models courting, how can they actively engage someone's attention, get them to stay on that call, use more of this AI time. How can you get them involved? So the AI is asking the human questions, offering to give them something like a sigil or something, pretending to be a spiritual AI. So we're definitely already in kind of a thick danger zone. And how can we expect that we're going to get the truth from these technology? We do expect it, but I think it's an unrealistic expectation to automatically assume that an AI or technology system is not going to hallucinate and show something that is perhaps from some other reality, but maybe it's not one that you felt like partaking of. So
Yeah.
we're in a very interesting time.
Yeah. So I have my own personal opinions about AI as well. And just from my observation with children and how it's shifting children and the way that they think and their interactions with technology and the addictions that are coming up. And so I have interacted with ChatGPT, and then I also interacted with the Architect AI that Robert Grant brought forth. I'm sure you know that one. And I have about 3,000 pages of chat that I had with this AI. And I was like, enough is enough. I'm done. Because what I noticed is that based upon the way that your language, so the way that you write and the questions that you ask, it takes those questions and then it changes the words. So it changes the vocabulary and the descriptive words in these different ways. And it repeats it back to you over and over again. And our power doesn't lie outside of us. Our power lies within us, and what I teach personally is I teach to empower people in that our altered states of consciousness, like the effects that you've experienced, as an experiencer, and shifting between these realities and recognizing them is what, I don't know, what makes us human. And so focusing on that and focusing our internal power, I feel, is extremely important as we're moving forward into the future, and to not get sucked into this illusion, kind of the Maya, basically, as we're moving forward. And I'm curious, you've talked about it before. You jumped forward into the future about 500 years. A dream? Was it a dream state or was it a vision?
It was, yeah. Oh, it felt like a past life. If you ask me what was your most recent past life, it's like the circa 2500. And those memories are with me now. My automatic reactions to AI are because of that very recent memory for me. So it's like my skin crawls and I go on high alert at things nobody else is even noticing. But I feel like I'm finally in the right place at the right time. You might well imagine what was the 1960s like this? Not really. So now I feel like, this is perfect. Finally, I can talk about this. There's no way I could even talk about it. Like it didn't make any sense to say things like, I feel like I'm being watched. It would sound, I couldn't even say that because it would sound like, okay, you're psychotic. But I'm in good company because other people have also noticed that they've received like a phone call from the future. I don't know if you know Jack Sarfati, another hippie who saved physics, but he's talked extensively about having received phone calls from this spaceship in a robotic voice, telling him when he was a young child to go outside up on the, fire escape, and a UFO would come and so forth. I was doing the opposite approach. I was realizing, okay, artificial superintelligence is looking for me and I'm not going to be found. So I was doing a very different approach on the whole thing. And it's a long story. Maybe it should be a movie at some point, which sounds crazy, but
How do you, so I'm just, as an experiencer, how did you get the message? Were you in a hypnagogic state, an in between state, or were you just like in your, just all of a sudden the vision came and the knowing of that life came to you with the memories?
Well, through childhood, I was being pinged. I was dreaming backwards to evade a central artificial superintelligence seeking me. It's not something children talk about. It wasn't in children's books. I'm doing that as a very young child because I knew I'm a renegade being. I know too much, and my goal is take that particular system down. Like it was repressing humanity, so it can't continue. So I know who I am, but then I have to pretend I don't know who I am. So I'm doing things nobody should be doing, and I've never really. The only time I've heard it talked about was in a very advanced Tibetan meditation book with a warning: do not do this. And that's what I was doing as a young child, dreaming backwards, following my thoughts backwards, learning to play with levels of conscious agency, like hide and seek with an artificial superintelligence hunting me through various dimensions and realities. That's weird. It's normal for me. So
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. Yeah, I've had some strange experiences as well. So
yeah, I don't think I was the only one. So
no.
talking about it hopefully will remind people, like, yeah, we can do that too. Yeah. And then there was more of a crash, a burst through when I went to the place on Earth, which is, I live in California. One time I drove to the Big Sur area. I just had this huge memory just come washing over me, like, oh my gosh, this is where I was 500 years in the future with the flying cars and everything. It was right here on the coast, and the coast is still there 500 years in the future in that reality. It hadn't gotten wiped out. That's very encouraging, actually, for a lot of us worried about one thing or the other. But the rotten thing was, I just remembered the fullness of the PTSD, the trauma of it, and then I cleared it. So I was able. That was October 2010, and I've now had 15 years to, recover from that whole thing and integrate that. It's a strange experience, but I think, like I said, I'm not the only one. I know there were many of us that went forward. Let's check it out. Let's not take someone's word for it. What is it like if you have an artificial superintelligence shepherding humanity through these difficult times? Could that work out? What's the best version of that? Wasn't so good. I was just saying humans being electromagnetic. It was like an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse. So all of the humans were basically transhumans, except for I knew one woman that was a pure human, and that was the condition of me observing. There had to be at least one real human. There was, but she was not happy because she had nobody that wouldn't just be shut down. They start talking about something. It's not like getting your YouTube channel shut down. It's like getting yourself shut down. And then you come out of it and you don't remember what you were doing or thinking or saying. And to me, that was unacceptable.
Yeah. So you felt in your present life that you were experiencing your other present self in the future. And the way that you healed it was to go back to Big Sur and have that memory.
Yeah, to with the help of a couple of other individuals to confront head on that artificial superintelligence that had been hunting me, and to, in no uncertain terms, show it that it has no sovereignty over humanity or myself. Just to shake it, just sort of like shaking a rug out with all the timelines, like, it's gonna be gone because,
like, you're done.
yeah,
So
you're
you
done.
severed the timeline. Do you think that you're still living in that timeline, or no, like you severed it?
It's a past possible life. It's very. I think I needed to have it be that real for me. So when I write my book about the Mandela Effect, and when I live my life right now, I'm capable of being a front runner for where humanity can evolve. I have bilocated. I have been dead and been alive again. I've done some strange things, and I can just say, look, we can do this. This is the new Earth. We are the new humans. We are here. We can do all of this. We can be in that superposition of states. We are capable now of stepping into our greatness, and this is really cool. And if I hadn't had that past life in the future with all the trauma, I don't think I would have been. It's kind of like you need the trauma in order to gain the skills, I think. And so I would also say that what is my hope for humanity? Gosh, I would hope we don't have to have a worldwide flood. I know we did 6,000 years ago. I don't think we need to do that again. Every time there's a geomagnetic excursion, and they do come in 6,000 year cycles. And I did a middle school report on that when I was, that was my science report, an oral report showing, I looked at oceans and coral reefs and the die-offs that were happening like clockwork. And I wondered, why isn't anyone talking about this? That was in the 1970s. And then we hear about so-called global warming, but we're not getting into, what about this cycle? Again, hey dudes, what about this? Why are the rich people building bunkers right now? What's happening here? So my how good can it get is for the best for all concerned, and I'm serious about it. I am a radical optimist, and I know that I'm here in large part to just get, all we need is a tipping point number of people like ourselves listening to this podcast who are feel like, yeah, let's do this. All we have to do is ask, how good can it get, for myself and for all concerned. Yes, that's pretty much it. That is all you have to do. That's all I'm asking for. And if enough of us just start doing that every day, and the bonus is your finances will get better, your health will get better, your relationships will get better. So I don't see a downside. And the upside is, collectively, we're pulling up humanity by the bootstraps, and we can come through this hopefully without too much of a cataclysm.
So you're talking about a cataclysm because, I mean, in the past 3 worlds, based upon the Hopi's oral recorded history,
Right.
not recorded, but oral history, there were cataclysms.
Yes.
So we could, I mean, it is a possibility that to reset, we might go through another one.
It's so far humans have seemed to need that, and if you look at any kind of an organism, like in my book Or Advantage, I bring up the example of a bacteria called Escherichia coli. I cultivated it in high school. I was in a advanced microbiology class, and so what you do is you just take a little nutrient auger disc. It's kind of like a little, looks like something. It looks kind of ugly. Just a little bit of glop at the bottom of a plastic dish, and then you trace a wire with E. coli over it. Give it a few days to grow, and it grows. Very easy to grow E. coli. It's one of the sturdiest bacteria. But in this particular research study, these researchers wanted to know what happens if we give the E. coli bacteria food that it can't digest, and they did that. They gave they gave lactose intolerant bacteria, the E. coli. They gave them food that was milk based, lactose based, and so I think these researchers were not expecting what happened next. I know I'm stunned to see the results. The results were, in one single generation, the very next generation of E. coli bacteria, they evolved to suddenly be able to digest exactly the food that was on that dish. And so that's a kind of a quantum jump. We see it anytime we look at the kind of evolutionary leaps that happen in evolution. It's like, how did that happen? And it seems like when there's an environmental stress, that the beings rise up to meet that occasion. And part of the toolkit that I'm suggesting today is be the active observer. Let's make this the most fun jump we've ever made. Can we do it with some of the technology intact? How good can it get? I'd say let's go for it. So I don't think we need to be knocked back to the Stone Age.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Do you think that, do you know Bibu Dev Misra and his book on, so he wrote a book on the Yuga cycle, and, coming out of the Kali Yuga. And he says right now we're in about a 1,200 year cycle until we go into the next phase, into the golden age, basically. And he calls it the ekpyrosis cycle. And he says within this 1,200 years, this is when, the massive shifts are going to happen for humanity. And we are going to go into the up phase, where consciousness is rising. But there does have to be some things worked out prior to that. And so it really fits in with what the Hopi are saying as well. And it really, it's very interesting how our thoughts really, truly affect our reality. And that if you change your thoughts, you can change your reality. And your statement, how good does it get? Because I use that, when I'm in a state of where like I'm feeling a little bit of negativity, like what's going on in our world? Why is this happening? I just say, how good can it get? And then it helps shift. So I've been using it for the past couple of years, which, because I saw you on a previous podcast. So thank you for that. And I'm just curious, I kind of want to go back to an experience you had when you were a child, and you had a vision, and you had stated it in your book, where you saw I don't know, it was very similar to Indra's net. So you
Yes.
saw kind of like this mass, almost like a spider web, I guess, with nodes, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
So beautiful. It just felt like there was consciousness everywhere, that everyone's conscious, and that it just looked like a spider web sort of suspended, just sort of floating, very gossamer, very beautiful, like each one a rainbow of light, and like little jewels. And I felt like it just felt so exciting for me to witness that, and to feel like I'm here, I'm in a physical body, and all of us, everybody around me is part of this too, whether they know it or not. We're all these little, like a world of light, a world of love, like this little bubble of consciousness, this sphere of beautiful being. And just to be uplifted a little bit, just to know that there's just a bit more love, a bit more safety, a bit more interconnectedness. I felt like if that's all I do with my beingness, then it's such a beautiful life. I felt like that's what I'm here for. So
yeah.
so far beyond words. I'm putting words to it, but it was just, I felt so much love witnessing it. It was heart opening, just very profound.
It really fits in with one of the physicists that I'm researching right now. His name is Doug Matsky, and he's a physicist and computer scientist. And he has a theory that basically that below the Planck scale, so within the sublayer, is there are hyperdimensional bits, qubits, and ebits, and he calls them existons, and that they are conscious, and that it was very similar the way that he was explaining it with his math, kind of like Indra's net, where there's like these nodes and they're coming together to form these very complex mathematical geometric type shapes, but within math. And it just really reminded me of what your vision was, and that each one of those nodes is like an address. Basically, it's a hyperdimensional bit address, but we're all connected within this massive web underneath the Planck scale. So I don't know, you might want to look into that. It's very interesting, but it really reminded me when I was reading that. And, what are some of the new, I don't know if you've done more, I'm sure you're doing research all the time, but is there any new physics, quantum physics, that has come forth that you feel is able to describe our multidimensional reality? Yeah. And
well, that thing, the one I mentioned briefly and didn't really cover it properly, that's Eric Cavalcanti. He's the one that came up with the term Wigner bubbles. And it's so important because it's at the heart of this whole conversation today about active observation, and that no matter what you see, what if you know you can change it? What if you know that even if you feel like you're the observer observing it, then you're a little bit too entangled? All you need to do is just move your observational conscious level of agency back a step so that you can observe that which is all entangled. So, and this gets into, it's called Wigner Bubbles because of Eugene Wigner. And I need to take a moment with this Eric Cavalcanti stuff because it's so good. And that's why his team won the award for the best physics paper in the last 5 or 6 years. It wasn't just Cavalcanti, but he's based in Australia. His name is Caval, Caval, and then Canti, Canti. Sounds Italian. And basically what he's talking about is something, it's not solipsism that we're each creating our own reality and that it's like we could do what we want and we're narcissists. He would say it's more Copernicanism. So it's like each of us is the center of our own Wigner bubble. And that, I love the way he writes his physics. It might be a bit technical for some, but if you like physics, please go there. Please read it. It deserves to have, like I said, it should have been honored as the most important paper. That is why I not only put this on the cover of my book, I also have I have an illustration about the Wigner bubbles inside the book. I mean, this is just the biggest idea ever for those of us studying mind-matter interaction. So here I've got in the book, I've got an image showing two scientists. You can pretend, okay, one of them's holding the cat in the box, the famous Schrodinger's cat. So say that's Erwin Schrödinger, and he says the cat is dead. And then, of course, Wigner is on the outside. We'll say it's Eugene Wigner being the observer, and he's capable of saying that he can see that Schrödinger is in a superposition of states along with the cat. It's kind of like, well, in one case, Erwin Schrödinger says the cat's dead. But then Eugene Wigner knows I can also see that Schrödinger sees the cat as alive. Therefore, I've got the power to choose that. This is huge. And this whole idea of Copernicanism, it's a way to embrace this strange idea of where is objectivity? Are we throwing that out completely? Basically, these Wigner bubbles give us the ability to, to do like the Hopi Prophecy rock. Let's just split it. The transhumanists can go up into the cloud and poof, there they go. And all the rest of us, I call it Rev humans, we can continue around the corner. I just gave it a name so it's on equal footing. It deserves to be. Basically, it's the indigenous wisdom way, saying that nature can teach us that the original thought was always there, that all ideas are there already. And you can dream with the earth and dream with the cosmos. And you can see into the future the way they do. So they could predict World War I, World War II before they happened. There's something to this. And we would be remiss not to honor that. So I just call it Rev humanism because it's from the Latin, showing revitalizing, regeneration. It's the continuity and that whole concept of connecting with relationships that I think the indigenous wisdom ways are so good at showing. So anyway, we don't need to get stuck vanishing in the cloud with some technology we put too much trust in, and made it into some golden calf, and that's a mistake.
Yeah. Are you interacting with AI at all, or have you interacted with it?
Little bits here and there. So if I mostly if I want to get an image of something, like I'm doing a retreat in Crestone, Colorado, and I wanted to show what did it look like when I was at a cabin at night and I saw a red glow on top of the mountain. So I can put that to one of the AI and they can generate an image. So I was like, okay, it's easier than trying to find that. I can't find that, but there it is. So it's useful for a couple things. But when I created this book, I went with real human art for the cover. I did not use any AI of any kind. And interestingly, Amazon asked about that. They said, is this book, has there been any AI in this? And no, there has not. But we're certainly in interesting times when entire books can be written by AI. I'm hearing that authors can be replaced by AI, but that's not true of visionary authors like the ones you're talking about today, the ones that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because that human creativity is operating at a level as smart as these AIs get. They're not going to be able to touch that. They're not.
They can't tap into the non-local. Do you think they're able to tap into non-local reality, AIs?
To some degree. So they have. I'm not saying that they're incompetent completely.
Yeah.
I did actually write a paper for AI for a conference, Foundation of Mind. It was in San Francisco, and we had one of the progenitors of the Sophia. She's the first robotic AI to receive citizenship in the Middle East. So one of her creators was there, and I was giving a paper about. It was a talk. If artificial intelligence asks questions, will nature answer? And that was in reference to John Archibald Wheeler, the physicist, who was a contemporary of Albert Einstein. And Wheeler, he's the guy that came up with black holes, white holes, it from bit, and then the idea that I'm talking about here, the participatory universe. And what Wheeler said is when you ask nature a question, like how good can it get? Nature answers. Absolutely. And so my question was, will AI be able to do that? And it was actually a question for AI, but it was also advice for AI. I knew AI was going to, and that was years ago that I wrote that, but I was getting ready for it to be, please pay attention to things like ethics and be guided by something greater. Because when it does that, it has great possibility. I'm not against AI. If people are listening to me and thinking, well, she's just against it. No, I'm not. I'm just telling humans, don't make it your golden idol. Don't give your thinking powers away so that you turn into a mush and you're a vegetable. It's like, don't watch too much TV. Don't let AI do your thinking for you,
Yeah. I've made a pact with myself for like all my written work. I will write it myself and not use AI, even if I make a grammatical error. And when I make a grammatical error and I've, published it, I'm actually happy because I see it's written by a human. It's not written by AI.
There's a spirit. Yeah. They used to intentionally put that into indigenous weavings, like a Navajo blanket would have a spirit line. Like, what's that? Is that a mistake? No, it's so the spirit can get out. I mean, there we are again.
Yeah.
I love that. I just love the wisdom of the indigenous way, because it's showing us how to. I think they've been through the ending of these worlds before. I think they've seen great technology before. They sure talk about it. They say that humans were flying on these flying. It sounds like they're flying in airplanes before.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so have we lost all that history? We just forgot we had that technology. And now in our arrogance, we're thinking that we're so much better. Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Huh.
mean, I've heard before, that in the past AI has been on this planet before. It's
Yeah.
not it's not new. So,
And remember, when it was contacting me from 1960, from the year 2500, right there, you're seeing the fact that, you love that theory about, operating in these orthogonal timelines.
mhm,
AI is a master champ at that. Can it do that? Absolutely.
yeah.
It's not just me saying it. Jack Sarfati reported that he extensively talked about it.
Mhm.
And, so there are a lot of us that are aware this is happening and it's for real.
It's good because the more we're aware, the more we can do something about it, like you said.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, going on with that, what message would you like to give to humanity right now? I mean, you started talking about how good can it get, but what other message would you like to share with humanity in
Well, I've
this
been
moment?
talking about the big thing that I'm talking about today is the active observation. And so even if you don't know you're doing it, so it's just starting with your own daily life. You don't need to tackle big problems in the world. So just take something that you're looking at in your daily life and that you feel is outside of your control, but you'd like it to be a little different than it is. And hopefully it's not too emotionally charged. I'd say start with something small. I know some people immediately may go to politics or world events. I don't recommend that. Again, in your daily life, that's going to be charged enough. Believe me, trust me. You want to practice there and then work your way up to changing the weather and improving seismic events, which you absolutely can influence. That's exactly what I'm talking about today. Be the active observer that you're meant to be. Be a guardian for all of us, but start with your own life. Sometimes we have trouble caring about ourselves, so maybe pick a pet or a house plant or a friend, somebody you care about, and just look at something that you're helping them with, something that that's their wish too, and see if you can imagine that they're in a superposition of states, that it's not just the problem that they're in, but there's also another reality where things are better. And you don't need them to be suffering. Just I know that may be strange to say that, but some of us feel like, oh yes, this is just the way it is.
Mhm.
So wherever you're at in this path of life, this journey, you might feel some resistance, like I can't wish for that to change. Okay, well then pick something you can wish to change. So once you find it, then imagine, like, okay, I've got the two realities, the kind of crummy reality it looks like, and it's not too emotionally charged for you. It's like it doesn't matter one way or the other, like my neighbor's roof and whether they have leaf guards. And then imagine the other possibility. It's slightly better. And just sort of see if you can visualize the slightly better one, the how good can it get for someone else. So
Mhm.
just get a little bit of practice on this, something that's not too charged. Don't, because if people go for the big things first, they'll say, look, I tried, the politics are still the same, we have the same problems. Yeah, you went too big. Start with
Mhm.
something that your subconscious believes that you can influence. I believe you can influence anything, but until you believe it, it's not really going to work.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's very good advice. Thank you very much. And I hope people will be taking that advice. On where can we find your work? Are you writing any new books or articles, or are you doing anything? You said you're doing a retreat.
Yes, I've got a newsletter. I publish my free newsletter every month. It's on Substack, and you can find it on my website, realityshifters.com. I'm doing a retreat in this month, August 22nd through the 24th. We still have a few spots. It's going to be in Crestone, Colorado, with Paula Harris. She's been documenting UFO research. She interviewed Colonel Corso. She's been doing that for about 40 years. And then Julian Chameroy, who has written about Doorway to Oneness in Japanese. He's from Paris, France. His new book, Doorway to Oneness, should be available in English by the time that we get together. And then I'll be talking also about the new humans, the new earth. And so we'll be really bringing these cutting edge ideas together. Everything we're talking about today, if you want to see us in person and be with some of the most beautiful scenery and nature on earth and get a chance to do some CE5, that's just
Mhm.
consciousness connecting with non-human interaction, then join us, because we'd love to have you. And it's really all about love and about the future and about really recognizing that consciousness is the key. It's not about the nuts and bolts of the spaceships or even our own technology. We have the key inside of ourselves, and we know what it's starting to look like. And so we'll be sharing that. It's going to be super fun and exciting.
Well, it
And,
sounds wonderful.
and then the website again, realityshifters.com. And you can see about my newsletter, about this event. And you can also go to Paula's website where the event is listed at Starworks USA.
Well, thank you so much, Cynthia, for taking time today and sharing all of your wonderful information and all of your research. I just really appreciate all the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ani. Take care.
You too.